Good morning, good afternoon, or as the case may be, good evening, and welcome to Distribution Strategy Group's Distribution Leader Panel on how distributors use AI today. We're going to be hearing from three individuals who work at different distributors who are applying AI in their companies. Brett Gavilio from Vertical Systems, Arjun Srinivasan from Wesco International, and Tom Ward from Porter Pipe and Supply Company. And we're going to be looking at applications that they're doing of AI within their companies, as well as broader use of AI technology from tools such as ChatGPT and Gemini, the what's known as generative AI. First, I wanted to share some information from our sponsors who make this session possible. First sponsor actually is Distribution Strategy Group itself. Customer Experience RX from Distribution Strategy Group. If you're looking to not only understand, but know how to improve the customer experience and customer satisfaction of your customer base, Customer Experience RX may be just for you. And the big idea is that for many distributors, the customer experience actually is the product. You sell similar products to your customers, to your competitors. So their experience with all the places they touch you, that really is your product. If you can get the information that leads to a better customer experience, that's going to give you better loyalty and ultimately more revenue. So what we provide through Customer Experience RX is actionable information from surveys that you need to improve satisfaction and customer experience. And we're seeing huge results from companies that are using this, who are gaining the insights necessary to make adjustments and get a better experience for their customers. Wanted to let you also know about our Profit and Productivity Summit, Optimization Strategies for Distributors, November 11 to 13 in Chicago. You can see the QR code there on the screen, www.profitandproductivity.com. We've got a number of very experienced and excellent speakers, including Janet Zelenka, Mike Marks, Brooks Hamilton, Randy McLean, and more. And the topics include everything from improving margins, managing costs to serve, looking at different ways to lower costs throughout your organization. By the way, we're going to hear about some of those here today in the webcast, driving marketing co-op, maximizing rebates, and so forth. So a lot of opportunity to not only get more profitable, but to get more productive and to get the benefits from efficiencies. Infor is a sponsor of our session today, and Infor is a global leader in business cloud software specialized by industry. They develop complete solutions for their focus industries, including distribution, industrial manufacturing, food and beverage, retail, and more. Infor's mission-critical enterprise applications and services are designed to deliver sustainable operational advantages with security and faster time to value. Infor's modern ERP and WMS solutions have distribution industry functionality built in, and they make it easier for you to offer new value-add services, elevate the customer experience, and achieve operational excellence. They are obsessed with delivering successful business outcomes for customers and are continually innovating to quickly solve emerging business and industry challenges. Over 65,000 organizations in more than 175 countries, from Fortune 500 enterprises to SMBs, rely on Infor's 17,000 employees and their deep industry expertise to help overcome market disruptions and achieve their business goals. Visit infor.com/distribution to learn more. Our next sponsor is Spiro. Spiro, as we explore how AI is optimizing everything from warehouse management to customer experience. It's innovators like Spiro AI that are reimagining what's possible in our industry. Spiro is turning traditional CRM on its head by leveraging AI to collect every activity related to your customers and opportunities automatically. This groundbreaking approach means you can literally ask Spiro anything about a customer or deal and get instant answers. No more wasting time searching through records or dealing with incomplete data. Imagine a CRM that doesn't just store information, but actively works for you, providing proactive insights and a complete real-time view of your customer relationships. With Spiro.ai, you're empowered to make faster, smarter decisions that boost profitability and keep you ahead of the competition. Spiro doesn't just streamline your order to cash cycle and reduce operational costs. It actually transforms the way you engage with customers. By reimagining CRM, Spiro is enabling distributors like you to harness the full power of AI. So as you listen to today's panel and consider how AI can benefit your business, think about how Spiro.ai is leading the charge in transforming our industry. Visit Spiro.ai, that's SPIRAO.ai, to learn more. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests, Brett Gavilio from Vertical Systems, Arjun Srinivasan from Wesco International, Tom Ward from Porter Pipe and Supply. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning, afternoon.
How's it going?
Hey,
It's good. It's going great. How are you doing?
Well, we're awesome here.
I think we've got all the time zones represented here, by the way. Brett, you're in California. I'm Mountain Time, Tom Central, and Arjun, you're Eastern. So we got it all covered.
I'm technically Eastern. I'm in Indianapolis.
Is that why it's nighttime where Arjun is?
No, I'm actually in Central, so yeah, we do have all.
Oh,
So.
We do have them. Yeah, my company is based in Chicago, but I actually work out of the Indianapolis location.
Got it. Well, now that we figured that out, we want to have a rich discussion today about where you and your companies are applying AI, what kind of results you're getting, maybe that you weren't getting before with either a not AI-based software solution or perhaps a manual solution, and how that can benefit other distributors who are contemplating using AI. So I want to start off first with you, Brett, and maybe if you could talk about how your company's using generative AI copilot technology to help gain efficiencies.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. You mentioned Spiro in your introduction, and so prior to us having Spiro, the CRM. We didn't have a CRM at all. And so we were literally maintaining customer lists, and we were individually creating pipelines for each individual salesperson. And we were individually quoting jobs off of, separate templates, right? And having to price everything in a separate Excel sheet and then store it in a repository. And maybe versioning would work, maybe versioning wouldn't work. And so there was no real historical data other than email itself that gave us any sort of context with a customer. And what was happening was all of our manufacturers that we represent, which is about, 30 or 40 manufacturers here, and for all these different HVAC systems in California, what was happening was, let's say, the top 10 of them would want to know what they're going to sell this quarter. And we would go through maybe a whole bunch of Google Sheets to try to figure out, what did Johnny sell? What did, what's Jack going to do? What's this guy going to do? Then there's calling and there's emailing and there's just all this drama, right? Of trying to figure out, nobody answers my emails. I can't tell Armstrong what we're going to sell for pumps, right? Enter the search for a CRM. We interviewed a few, and Spiro was the one we chose. We created a top to bottom solution with them. First, to do quoting that would aggregate all our quotes, and then for a second iteration, we integrated pricing, and we moved it out of a Google environment. From the first version to a Microsoft SharePoint, and so that rich customer interaction where you start with the customer and you create, go through the opportunity, and you can look at, what you're selling to each customer, and it just the data self-sorts and you're not, we actually made it so that when you're pricing a job, once you fill out the pricing sheet, it populates and does all the math, all the adds and deducts and everything in the quote. And if you change it in the quote, it changes it in the pricing. And so we've got forward and backwards portability in there, and that's all on their server. But you know, that I kind of consider that to be AI, but maybe the fact that it's looking at the customer and you can see how you priced, what you did, you can track every different thing from every different manufacturer. I can pull up data, by quarter or sales stage or whatever, by salesperson. I can see what salespeople tendencies are and set goals for people. We can better manage the customer. But then we started building on that and having them sit on our meetings. And so Spiro sits on our meetings as a co-pilot, already knows that, that's that one invite, whoever it is, Jane Doe that we're on a meeting with, that customer, whatever, sits on my Teams or my Zoom, and it transcripts everything everybody says, has a little video that we can play back, and then summarizes it, a very ChatGPT type function. And all of the action items are summarized in a meeting, which has saved me as a leader, like, oh my God, I can't, maybe 10 hours a week. So I can jog now. I can go to the gym now. And so there's I've got a few more integrations that I'd like to do to enrich in the customer experience, because I think I could pull this over to our service side of our business, and maybe do a little bit more in that direction. But this was my COVID project of, can we implement a CRM? And then yes, we can. And then can we make it quoting? Yes, we can. Can we integrate pricing and quoting functionality in a better environment? Yep. Can we?
So this is amazing, Brett. So you've integrated the CRM, the quoting, and the pricing. Is there AI in, for example, anything that's happening with the quoting or with the pricing?
Not really. We haven't really gotten to the point of connecting the dot. I think that there is a way for us. The only AI really is a reminder, like it'll correlate the emails that you're sending, like customer correspondence.
Yep.
And it'll come back and it'll say, hey, it'll give you a summary however often you want, and it'll send you a message and say, these are the commitments you made this week. You said you were going to deliver this at this time. You said that this product was going to ship this day. So it does have AI functionality, meaning it's scrubbing your quote history and your customer interactions and suggesting next paths. So it is kind of coaching you. That there are some interactive things in there. Have we trained it to coach everybody really well? Not really. It's still very new to us, but I think as there's other VoIP functionality, like you could use the VoIP number in the CRM such that if you call that, it'll transcribe that. Essentially, the more data you feed the thing, the better it can help you.
It sounds like, and I mean this in a good way, it's automating a lot of mundane things that you would otherwise do.
That's the idea. I think, and so the next part is in the things that we have struggled with of creating reports. People don't like to read things and people don't like to type things. So I'm trying to figure out some new ways to create such things as like service reports, and maybe make them a little bit better and make them faster and and create some processes that would share across teams faster, because I can see where it's going. It's easy to see how you can use the LLM and carry that and keep enriching, keep adding data into that one customer experience, that activity log that you have with the one customer.
Wow, amazing. We're going to come back to you. I want to shift now to Tom, because in a related theme, you've been doing some stuff with your CRM and cross-sell. Maybe if you could tell us what you were doing with cross-sell before AI was injected into the equation, and what you're doing now, and maybe what the differences are. Actually, let me just say one other thing. This recording will be available probably within 24 hours at the latest, maybe a few hours after this meeting. So, and that will be sent to everybody who participates. The second thing is, if you have questions, there is a Q&A button, and we will try to answer them as close to the time that you ask them as possible. Tom.
And hopefully the sound is better for Amit now. There was a question about whether or not they could hear it. But to touch on real quick, something that Brett said, and that is automation is so good these days. It's hard sometimes, the lines are so blurred from really good automation and what AI is really doing. And those two things, they tend to be very compensatory to one another. But for us, we're not using AI, I don't think, in any way that's spectacularly different than any other organization that's been in online sales for a while, and that or over the phone, or across the counter, but recommending the right products, the product recommendation AI, those things, knowing what you have in your warehouse that matches some of the selection items that might come up in the recommendation engine. Those are all things that we are looking at for the proper ways and testing to aggregate those in, to make sure that we're not forgetting stuff that's been in the been on a shelf in one of our warehouses for several months at a time. So it's a collective effort, getting that technology to look at both, hey, this is the best fit for this, but there's also a secondary or maybe a third optional item that you might need to throw into that shopping basket for that customer.
And go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. I think that kind of got to what you were talking about, John.
Yeah, and so this is making a recommendation that either a sales rep or a customer service rep would make. Is it for a rep to use, or is it for e-commerce?
It's multifaceted, right? So you could be in your online shopping cart, and it could just be a recommendation that comes up in there. It could be across the phone with your inside salesperson. It could be in the field, in the pocket of your outside salesperson who knows the projects that you've got going. It could, not just cross-sell, reminding that particular outside salesperson that there are 3 or 4 other quotes that he's looking for a PO on at the same time. So it's driving business in all different directions. Wow,
that's huge. Let's stay with the recommendation piece for just a second, because for many years that's been a holy grail in distribution. Right. You have customers who buy products from you. They might be good customers who buy a very narrow set of products from you. You've literally got thousands or tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of other things you could be selling. So when cross-sell happens, we get a couple of benefits. We get not only more revenue, we get a bigger order, right? And
right.
Bigger orders are more profitable. There's more gross profit dollars in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's say that you have a customer that for a fact has been coming to you for 10 years for this one thing all the time. Every job he does, he's there and he gets 60 of these things. Well, for a fact, if you're using that particular item, that it needs, for instance, and I'm just going to use the word strut, that you're going to need strut because you're using hangers, for instance. And with those hangers and the strut, you're going to need clips, you're going to need all these other things. Well, all of those things are suddenly right there. And then you can have discussions if you happen to be with the customer on the phone, if the customer's in your shop, or if they're shopping in your online store.
Yeah, And so was there a version of this prior to your current system that you were running in some way? How did you make these accessories or cross-sell recommendations?
It's it's a labor of love. It's been you know, a year plus in growing and making sure that the organization was mature enough to start implementing the technology. We had to move our ERP into this decade. I mean, and these are all things that organizations have to think about when you get ready to move yourself into what is a hybrid digital marketplace. That you've got to be able to manage all of that, both in the front of the house and in the back of the house at the same time.
Okay, so prior to this, that if cross-selling was happening, it's probably because a rep was good.
Because they were really good, or they know they've done the job. And one thing's with very prominent for me, and I've been with this organization now for 4 years, and I do not come from wholesale distribution, so it has been one big learning opportunity for me to see how this business really touches so many other elements of business that I was unaware of. But yeah, it could be plumbing, it could be mechanical, and it's going to take an educated person that's been selling that experience and can produce that. Well, you're going to need this, this, and this. Or now you have this product recommender that says, hey, if they bought this and this, there's a real good chance that this is the job that they're doing. These options might also be available.
Terrific. Terrific. Arjun, when we were preparing for the show, you discussed a number of things that you're doing. Among them was the dynamic personalized pricing. And I wonder if you could describe what you're doing there and perhaps how it's different than what you had prior to doing AI.
Yeah, absolutely. The main driver for AI is data, and so in this case, for this recommendation on pricing that is more like customer or product specific, we are using the data, like our own internal data from past transactions and other market signals and whatnot, to come up with the right pricing and the margin recommendation, so to speak. So that's where AI, we all had some analytics in the mix there. We all were tapping into that data. In the past, it was very descriptive and a little bit of the predictive, and now I can say that it is changing from descriptive to predictive to more prescriptive. Like what more can you do? How can you personalize something? Like when it comes to like recommendation for a customer or a certain customer segment or a certain product segment. So that is the change that this new flavor of AI is bringing to the mix.
So when we think about pricing, most of the pricing systems that we see in distribution, whether it's targeted towards the mid-market or larger distributors, focus on historical pricing as a basis for determining a price for a particular customer. And that historical pricing is often segmented into, this is what happened with large customers, this is what happened in this industry segment versus that segment. Here's what happened in product group A versus B versus C. So there's some type of segmentation based around history. Is there something that the AI-based pricing is doing different with that history? Or are there other forms of information that it's taking in, like you mentioned, market signals? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, right. No, I mean, like when you talk about the segmentation itself, you're kind of doing some clustering and whatnot. I call that AI as well, in the sense that it's an algorithm. It's an algorithm, or in simple sense, it's a model which is taking your data as a feedstock into the model and coming up with an algorithmic approach to drive recommendation. So there is an AI in it, and and on top of it, you're not only looking at your own internal signals, like just your own like historical or transactional data. The way you blend the market signals is where a little bit of the generative AI also comes into mix there. Like I'm not claiming that we do that, but I also sit in a lot of like executive roundtables and whatnot, in the retail industry, it is much more matured, where I'm seeing LLMs come in and being able to integrate multitude or a lot of variations of data, and then make the right recommendation based on the market signal, based on the forecast of like whatever macroeconomic indicators, and your own historical transaction data, and also tapping into the CRM, for instance, like what do you have in your opportunity pipeline and whatnot. So, like it's how do you make sense of a mix of this data, both internal and external. So that's the new flavor, I would say.
Very interesting that you mentioned that. So I can imagine a number of different market signals that would be relevant. One obviously would be some kind of screen scraping of prices of the competitors. Now, obviously that's a list price or a web price as opposed to a quoted price. I can imagine also looking at availability of competitors. So you look for the SKU, is it available on the competitors? No? Okay, the price just went up a little bit, right? We're not going to gouge, but the price just went up because we do have it available, they don't have it available. Could you talk about the other types of market signals that might be relevant that you could foresee in the future?
I think like taking that industry focused approach is very important. Like say if and like you can go up and down that hierarchy, but I would say like start with that industry or a vertical focused approach. Like say it is like renewables, for instance. What the signals in the renewable are going to be from a macroeconomic perspective. So not just the competitor lens that you talked about, Jonathan. I mean, that is important to know as well. But then, what are the changes coming? Like, what are the trends in that renewable space that you anticipate to see, so that you can price and prepare for that accordingly? So a lot of those like external indicators from a macroeconomic space and from an industry specific lens is really useful.
I would say that right in line with that too is if you happen to have items that are commodities, that could factor right into not only what the competitors have, perhaps in stock and everything else, but what did the market change in the last 2 hours? And that is certainly not something that we're doing as of yet, but we monitor for the commodities that we do sell, we monitor those daily. And to think if that was built into the pricing science that you're using, you could offer a pretty accurate, once you know what stock you have, what the competitor's market looks like, you could position yourself for, almost a winning price every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think this is a really huge opportunity in pricing because I think the vast majority of the pricing solutions and distribution are backward looking. And they're really not taking into account market signals of any kind, like the macro trend that you mentioned, or what's happening with competitive pricing or availability in the geofenced area. There's a bunch of things that have not been incorporated, and to your point, they have been incorporated in a lot of the retail pricing. I wanted to shift now, if we could, Arjun, to you talking about some of the work that you're doing in the mid office around different types of forecasting. Again, before, after scenarios where AI has produced value for you in those areas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I would say along the same lines of the pricing scenario that we talked about, being able to quickly go from just a spreadsheet based analysis to say, hey, like for your ISRs or OSRs to know what at the customer and then at the product level the sales is going to look like for the next quarter, like next month, next quarter, and so on and so forth. So being able to look at that granular forecast at the granular level based on your own historicals is like really important. And the same flavor of signals, the data that we talked about in pricing could also be like relevant here, right? And once you're able to do that bottoms up forecasting, then you can aggregate it whatever level you want up that hierarchy. So I would say both, like a COGS or a SKU level forecasting to do better inventory management, which would then lead into better inventory optimization and so on and so forth. That is, that's another use case that we are looking into.
And what do you anticipate broadly the benefits of that approach over the traditional approach?
Yeah, so it's again being more proactive than being like reactive, I would say. Like say if you want to ahead of time, you want to like say, um, how do I know which customers are going to churn? Like for instance, if if you want to take a customer specific approach, or you want to say, hey, I want to kind of do that 80/20 analysis on my product, and then hold the ones that are high velocity in my inventory. So for you to have that look back from the product data, I mean like some could be like slow movers, or like some could be just, like you might just have had one sale over the last year, like one transaction over the last year. So being able to slice and dice it at both the SKU level or the product level and at the customer level would give you that look forward in terms of, how can I win this customer because I see that they're going to churn. What more can I do? Right. So it lets you create these growth opportunities, create increased revenue opportunity from a customer perspective, and then it lets you save cost from the product perspective. So I would say both have tangible impacts in that increase in revenue or reduction in cost.
Okay, so forecasting who's going to buy what at the SKU level, forecasting who's going to churn, and then demand forecasting in terms of what you need in the warehouse.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Let's stay on the churn. Let's stay on the churn thought for just a moment here, if we could. Churn is basically a science in the retail world. If you are Verizon or Comcast or even Netflix, you've got the advantage of large amounts of data, by the way, right? Verizon has 80 million customers. And so what Verizon will do is each month they'll run through AI and they'll stack their customers 1 to 80 million in terms of likelihood of churn. And they'll take the top 3% and they'll apply some type of intervention. And actually, based on the signals from the customer, they have specific interventions. So based on your signals, we might be accelerating the time frame in which you get a new phone. Based on Tom's signals, we might be be giving him the all data plan for free. So there's a variety of things that we can do. How does what you're doing or aspiring to do compare to that type of an approach?
I would say it's the same thing, right? I mean, like being able to tap into that vast volumes of data is like really important, because if you don't have data for any particular customer or particular product or particular segments of customers or product, you can't just do much about it, right? Because at that time yeah. So to your point, yes, in the retail world, it works like a charm, without having us having to think about it. But in this case, you need to be a little bit more like innovative and see, hey, like for these, so like at the lowest level of that hierarchy, you probably don't have data for a lot of these customers. So what can I do? Like one possible technique could be, can I roll that up a few levels higher and then do like an industry level prediction? Or like, so that's where the earlier things we talked about from a segmentation perspective can come handy. You might be able to find pockets or segments of customers. When you roll that up, the data adds up like aggregates, right? And that's just like really simple statistics. But then at the very granular level, you have like really sparse data, and any AI algorithm, you need the data to be fed into it. So to your point, you can get a little bit more innovative, but take the recipes from the retail world and then see how it is applicable to the distribution world. So that's your approach.
I think that's a really interesting point that you bring out. Even for a distributor as large as Wesco, the amount of data that Verizon has is literally hundreds of times more.
Mm.
Right? Maybe Wesco has 250,000 customers. Verizon has 80 million. That's 320 times as many customers.
Right.
Right. So that's a challenge that we have in using big data. I watched a company hire somebody who'd been at Target, 70 million customers. This distributor had 7,000 customers. It's very difficult to do analytics on 7,000 the way you would do it on 70 million. So, okay. So then on the demand forecasting, are you seeing a reduction in the working capital required based on the quality of the demand forecasting?
We are like starting to see that. I can say we are like starting to see that without going into
Yeah.
more details on it. But yeah, yes, and see, I'm like this is more of a payoff that it will start to pay itself off down the lane, right? Like once you have the right data, once you are tapping into the right algorithm, once you put that right approach, like right out of the box, you're not going to see that impact right away. It's going to take like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatnot, right? So, but over the lifespan, like over the next several years, we'll plan and like continue to track it, and we'll see the, hopefully reap the rewards of it.
Yeah, I think what you'd hope for, and I've seen some of this in work that we've done, is lower cost, lower working capital requirements, and fewer out of stocks. I mean, you're meeting the service levels are going to be better, and the working capital is going to be better. And prior to doing that, you can say, well, we can increase service levels, but working capital is going to have to go up.
Right.
Or we can reduce working capital, but service levels are going to have to go down. And here you're actually getting both, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Good. Tom, you'd spoken a little bit about some of the work you're doing with RPA and automation work. Could you share a little bit more about that use case and the kind of benefits that you're getting?
Sure. So, for myself and for the team that I am a member of, one of our primary objectives is to add time back to the shop floor, add time back to the sales staff, and then also that we're taking care of any of the impediments to sales or delivery. If it's impacting one of those two things, it is the number one priority in our organization for the folks that do my job. And so what we're looking at are the things that are tedious. That is documents that come in. And we talked about earlier, we have these certificates that we have for products that are built or anything that's founded, a chemical reaction or some matter of materials are put into it that have to be recorded and then passed on to the vendors and the builders that use that. And I think in our earlier conversations, I used MSDS. Everyone's familiar with that, what that looks like. It's around, there's one in almost every major building that you'll go to where any kind of chemical or cleaner is used. You can go identify it. Same thing has to happen for buildings and things that go into buildings, so that infrastructure. And we track via these certificates those individual elements. Well, they can come in digitally, which is great. It's like one of the best ways to get them, or you can go and download them. But automating that process, and one of the bigger ways that we get them is attached to the items when they come in, which doesn't always say that they're in the best condition, but along with that are the individual heat numbers or the lot numbers in which they were created. And that has to be tracked, so that way when we sell it, it gets picked and put into a package for that order and then sent off to the folks that are going to be doing the build work. We're using, as whatever automations that we can find, and we're using, because we're an N4 shop, CSD, RPA is definitely the products that we've looked at doing that, along with the document processing element. And Arjun, remind me what that's called again. I think it's IDP.
IDP, yeah. Right.
Thank you. Those two things allow you to use both the scanning and then the AI within the OCR recognition to identify those documents, classify them into the right heat lots, the ship tos that they might be going to, into the individual customer vendor classifications within the ERP. So taking all of that, what would have been time spent, somebody scanning something, identifying, classifying it, and assigning it, and automating and using AI to do all of that work. So that way they can facilitate getting orders out the door.
How would you describe the aspects of, or the benefits? I mean, obviously it's a time saving. Hopefully you get greater accuracy, or, greater percentage of correct bundles of documents. Is it hours.
Oh, yeah,
per-
see, human error being eliminated right off the bat, and I don't want to. This is not a scare that the jobs are going away. This is one of those jobs that gets done last, and it typically doesn't always get done well, because the last thing you want to do at the end of your shift is go scan 80 documents to make sure that they get classified right when you just spend 8 hours loading trucks. So, or unloading trucks for, in this instance, if it's receiving. It's finding a way to tackle that problem without increasing, the amount of staff overhead that you might need. Because that, as everybody knows, we live in a world of margins. That's going to attack your margin one way or the other. But when the technology is there and it's as savvy as it is these days, via automation and AI, you have a very easy tool set to implement and teach the tool to recognize these things. And so if you can take 80% of that and you moved it into automation, it's classified and it's working, and then there's only 20% of that needs to be, let's say, hand checked or very quickly screened by one or two human beings, you have made a massive dent in the amount of time that you give back to the floor and for other things.
Okay. Would you measure it on a per project basis kind of a thing?
That is not really something that I do on a regular basis, but I would, if I could, once I had it finished, I would probably look at it almost on a per order basis,
Per order
because
basis.
not every order that we do has that.
Okay.
And it's I don't even think it's an even 50-50. It's more like a 20-80. But that particular element is extremely valuable to the service that we deliver.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the idea of scanning and somehow integrating 80 documents just sounds like nightmarish.
Yes. That is definitely a very good adjective.
Okay. So in this case, it's really automating a lot of mundane tasks, freeing your people up to do other things, right?
Correct. And very easily you could take the exact technology for selling or for quoting, especially if you're getting these quotes in the same format. Very easy to automate that technology, get it processed, and then you just build the technology to identify that part within your ERP system, price it, put that quote together, and have it reassembled. So you could nearly completely automate an RFP process, especially if you happen to get, let's say that you have a specific vendor that always sends them in the same format. You could build that so that in minutes you could turn that quote around.
Wow. That's perfect. On this thread, Arjun, you had mentioned some work that you're doing in the RPA and IDP world with RFPs, with purchase orders, with quotes, with emails. Rich area for AI. Could you take us through a little bit of what you're doing or thinking about doing?
Sure, yeah. I think Tom, like whatever Tom mentioned was spot on. Like I completely echo from an application or a use case, right? Like you can use these. I would say in the past it was just OCR, but now there is more intelligence in that automation, right? Like that's the way to think about it. There was always an automation through an OCR or through an RPA or bot, and now with new flavors of LLM, that intelligence is. I mean, like these things are getting smarter. They can recognize fields with all kind of formats, all kind of templates, right? Like you don't need to do a lot of this annotation and labeling, which was quite a cumbersome process in the past. And I come from that world, right? Like as a technology leader, and we like this is a classic computer vision problem where you need to train to identify certain patterns, and the pattern identification becomes much more easier these days with the advent of Gen AI and LLM. So that's the piece which makes it more affordable, because you can spend less time to train and customize it. But if you choose the right tool and right partner, then you can bring that in and then start to impact across the board especially if you sit on a corpus of document for all of this data entry work, I would say. And I think Tom mentioned a really good point, which is it's not just a data entry work, but what kind of actionable recommendation that you can get out of it, right? Like, can you use that to drive proposals or RFPs? Like, can you use that to generate new emails to your customers and codes? Now that the pattern matching works, your data entry works, what more can you do with it? Is where I see the next phase of innovation is yet to come, but I think that's where like real value is going to be coming in.
Are you able to take, for example, an email and determine, oh, there's a request for a quote in there and something happens with that, or oh, there's actually an order in there? Is that the kind of thing that you're doing with your document processing?
It is, I mean, the integration is already there. I wouldn't say that's what we are exactly doing,
Okay.
but the integration is the easier component, right? I mean, like there are all kind of softwares out there which can start from an email, like it can, I mean, like that's where the RPA and the bot still exists and it still adds that value, right? Like identifying that right source of information. But once you have that end-to-end workflow, and that is really important because a lot of these IDP capabilities, as Tom was mentioning, they usually end up in a very silo. How do you bring that capability into your organization and think about that end-to-end workflow, to your point, all the way from an email when it comes in, identifying what that pattern is, and then going from there until the end. Like if it sits in certain database, like a cost or a pricing database for quotes or like whatever that is, right? Like if you want to drive any actionable recommendation, you need to think about it as a traditional BPA or a business process automation. And how can IDP be a part of the BPA is key.
If you were to think about the totality of what a customer service rep does, are you getting, or do you foresee a 15 or 20% productivity improvement, 25, 30? What kind of a productivity improvement from all of this might you imagine?
That's a good question. I don't want to shoot off my hip, but I would say you are going to be incrementally seeing more productivity. That delta is going to be like you're going to see that positive delta on a year-on-year basis because these things get more intelligent. You are spending less time. You are improving the automation from that end-to-end workflow perspective. So that's the way I would put it, rather than quoting an exact number.
Okay.
I mean,
Brent,
I think for a lot of organizations, depending upon their size, this is going to be net new.
Yeah, I agree.
when you say net new, you mean just this kind of automation workflow?
Yeah, let's say that let's if we were to take the quotes thing just a step further, and because it is a slow, cumbersome process when somebody gets it to you, and it could come in handwritten. I mean, the stuff that comes in email, if you think about it, you've already got the first step done for you because they've identified it as a quote. It's email. It's already in a bucket somewhere. So now you just got to filter the bucket, pull out the data, sort it by customer. And that's probably already done in the email as well, based on who sent it. That is, I look at that as something that is net new business because you may only, if a human being is getting that, they may process 10 to 20 a day or a week if they have time to go in and do those, if you don't have an entire organization that does that for you. And that's the way I would look at it from where I am right now.
Okay. Brett, you mentioned you were thinking about some of the document processing stuff as a next step.
Well, I would definitely say that Arjun just created a little ideation for another BPA that I think I could implement. I didn't actually even really think that I could utilize OCR, but it's possible. So, my business is way different. That you guys are probably doing much higher volumes of quotes, and so we sell really big things. And everyone in everybody in fulfillment in my company is a mechanical engineer. So I have a room full of six-figure mechanical engineers that are doing process work. Okay. And so we'll go through a set of plans, and some of the things will be basis of design on, some of the things we won't. and we'll figure out what we can quote and what we can't. So generally, those engineers are sitting there running selections for giant heat exchangers and pumps and chillers, cooling towers, and things like that. It rests on them to somehow get those selections and the pricing of those selections integrated into the software. And I just got this idea of, could the OCR read the selection and populate the front end of the quote? Arjun looks like yes. I question as to whether that's a good or a bad thing to do, because if you make a mistake in my business, it's a big one.
Yeah.
This is not a, so that the average cost of goods sold for a giant stainless steel cooling tower that's the size of your house is large, so you don't want to get your quantities wrong.
Yeah.
Well, but to your point, Brett, there actually are products off the shelf. Wesco may be developing their own based on their size, but there are products off the shelf that populate the front end of the quote. They get smarter over time.
Yeah. For instance, the selection portion of that, not that we have cooling towers or anything like that, but we may have, let's say, for instance, a certain schedule of pipe. Just knowing what that schedule is limits the amount of options that it could populate, and then an individual could go in there, well, it's this and this, and you could set your learning model up so that every time that happens, it's remembering when it sees that, it knows that it's probably that, and then it narrows that band every time to the point where it's got it pretty much dialed in after multiple iterations.
Are you guys actually pulling in building plans, mechanical plans, and using OCR to translate a schedule?
Not at that level. No, we still have a human being going over those plans, identifying those parts.
Me
but
too.
I could tell you that is definitely on the roadmap, because it's a little different than scanning an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, right?
Yeah.
It's a much larger hunk of OCR. The nice thing is most of those plans come in a format that's digestible.
Yeah, and so the ideation here for me is more or less that person has already translated that plan into a selection of a unit, and they've got an output from a manufacturer. The question is, if I want to turn that thing into a quote and I want to integrate that pricing, can I make an AI process that does that such that they don't have to type it in, right? Because I believe keystrokes for engineers, eliminated them having to type it twice, right? In our process now, and every time they make a change, and the fact that we've got data sharing across platforms, meaning management can review the thing at the same time as salesperson, at the same time as engineer, and we can all commiserate on a meeting and then say, yeah, we think this, and this. So we're sharing the market trends and data internally between big groups of people on shared documents for pricing, because we're trying to make reasonably large decisions. But the question as to whether the thing could read the various selections for the things and then import.
Pretty sure that it could.
Process.
I think it's going to be the amount of horsepower required to do it, depending upon the scale of the size. And that is not something I have a lot of experience with, but I think that you could very quickly, just knowing what I know is available in current models, that you could go from having a set of plans in front of you and whatever CAD that you might be using or whatever, and you could go quickly from identifying something and jotting it down or plugging it into a form to it scanning it, giving you a screen pop going, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Or offering it the options fairly quickly.
Tom, we've got a specific question for you, and then I think we're going to move towards wrap up. So the question is there a specific RPA application that you are using?
Well, give it like I said, we're an import shop, and we are definitely exploring the RPA tool. It's called RPA, and
Okay.
it comes with it. You buy RPA and IDP together. New version just dropped. As a matter of fact, this month, if you happen to be using Infor products, and then also Power Automate, and believe it or not, the tools that are available on AWS at scale are very good.
Terrific. Gentlemen, thank you for a very rich and informative discussion today. There will be more to come on this topic over time. We've been focusing a lot on AI this year. We've looked at a few use cases of where AI can provide better effectiveness, better efficiencies within the organization. Suffice it to say, there are many more. We look forward to exploring those in future sessions. In terms of upcoming events, we've got two. Next week is the impact of AI on working capital, featuring Graham Smith from Esker, Greg Hartunian from Epicor, and Chandra Subramania from ORS. So that will be October 16th, same time, same station. And then on October 30th, a wholesale change, which will be our 100th wholesale change episode, will be including a couple of our frequent flyer participants in the podcast and the webcast, Ron Paulson, former Grainger exec, Eric Wessinger, president of Richards Supply. So we look forward to seeing you then. And thank you again, Tom, Arjun, and Brett, and have a great day, everybody.
Y'all have a wonderful day. Thanks.